Adam, how do you feel about today's show?
I'm nervous and a little anxious.
Why is that?
I feel like I'm being judged.
It's showtime. This is The Ski Show, the ultimate show ski podcast, and your one and only source for all things show skiing, bringing you news, knowledge, and interviews with the legends and stars of our sport. Here are your hosts, Matt Heilman and Adam Schaller.
Welcome to the Ski Show. Today, coming to you with an all-new episode and dropping some knowledge with two of the best senior judges in the business, Jeff Henke and Sandi Oleson. We pepper them with questions about scoring, charts, box scores, the current state of judging. You're certain to walk away from this one with a better understanding of our sport.
Today's sponsors are Flyman Skis, custom-made jump skis, and Featherboard swivel skis at affordable prices. Get yours at flymanskis.com and by the board shop. All your summer and winter board sports gear is yours at bswake.com.
Yeah, I don't like that word winter, Adam. You sort of emphasized that. That's not fun.
I don't know if it's going to show up, dude.
Savings coming here. It's going to be dark
As
at
we're
4
recording
o'clock.
this, it's 80 degrees.
It is. You're right. And it's
End of
beautiful
October.
in Madison, Wisconsin. It's 80 degrees today on Tuesday, October 29th when we're recording this. Yes.
Yep.
But darkness is coming. Not much show ski news right now. Maybe our next episode we will. We do have a big weekend coming up this coming weekend with the NSSA meeting, the Send It night jump competition, the Flaunt It swivel competition, an all-star ski benefit ski show for Pete Haggerty, all sorts of stuff going on. It's going to be an awesome weekend. I'm going to be there. I'm actually taking Riley with me for the weekend, and it should be an all-around great weekend.
Yeah, I'm sure most people are excited for the jump and swivel competition and the ski show, and you're excited for the NSSA meeting. So, yeah, have fun with that.
For that. I'm jacked. Just jacked for that. I can't wait. Yes, indeed. Our awards committee, Adam, is just about done with their work. Hours of work they have put in, and it is going to be time for us to reveal the top 5 nominees in each of our awards categories. On that note, we are doing a live stream on Sunday night, December 1st, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And this live stream is going to be the reveal of our top 5 nominees in each category. We've done this every year now with the award show. We are going to have a live stream on Facebook Live on our Facebook page. And then the social media graphics of the top 5 nominees of every category will be pumped out that evening. So it's going to be awesome, exciting stuff. It is, in my opinion, one of the most exciting nights in show skiing is people tuning in to hear who's going to make the top 5. Who is going to make the top 5 in each category? I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And I don't envy the awards committee, the amount of work that went into this, because there's so much talent for all of these categories. And if there was an award for the longest Facebook message thread, it would probably go to what's ongoing with the awards committee. So, hats off to them for all the hard work. And it's going to be exciting, December 1st, to reveal those nominees.
100%. Thank you to Brad Satterley, our producer here of our podcast and our YouTube channel, the YouTube side of our podcast. He also is essentially the chair of that podcast awards committee, and he does all the note-taking, all the organization. He puts together the voting process for our 11 committee members. And so kudos to Brad. Thank you so much for all the work that you do. All right, Adam. It is time to dive into this week's Hot Takes. What do you got?
All right. Well, the podcast is probably going to get some hate mail for this one. Ooh. But my hot take is comedy should be a required act in every show.
Scored.
Hear me out.
Ooh,
There's 13 acts, right? We're all doing our darndest to cram in as much skiing as possible, and we are using all of the 60 minutes. I think if comedy gets slotted in there as an act that is scored, that brings your skiing acts down to 12. I think that increases flow. It maybe shortens up some shows, and it kind of forces that entertainment value back into shows because teams are getting away from it, right? Because of scoring, and our team included. And I think if you make it a requirement, that forces some new creativity, and I think it might spice things up a bit.
I don't hate the idea, to be honest with you. The way the evolution of our sport has gone, it'll be a fun question to ask Jeff and Sandi when they come on the show here, because comedy is a 0 to 100 point category, and it's a little bit nebulous. People go for the known quantity in their ski shows. They know what they're getting for a barefoot line. They know what they're getting for a ballet line, right? So it's an interesting hot take. Wow. All right. Required scored comedy in every ski show. Don Buffa will agree with you 100%. Don has believed in this from the beginning. Don is on your side. He believes comedy should be scored in every ski show. All right. My hot take. I believe the judging system should be changed. And here's what I mean by that. I grew up as a kid with some uncles who were in drum corps, drum and bugle corps.
Nobody knows.
For those of you who don't know what drum corps is, Adam is getting into drum corps now because you have a kid who's in marching band and wants to get into drum corps, correct?
Yep. Just went to a meeting this past weekend. Ski shows and drum corps are so crazy correlated. It's ridiculous how close they are.
Let me tell you where this idea was born. Drum Corps International, their national tournament used to be held in Madison, Wisconsin, Camp Randall Stadium, and we'd go every year. And they are judged on their performance, their theme, their formations, their flow, their movement, their color guard, which is their flag line, essentially, their drum line. They get all of these scores, and they're scored together. But what Drum Corps has is one judge is watching drum line. One judge is watching formation and movement. One judge is watching the color guard. One judge is judging their theme and production. So adopting that to show skiing, 7 judges, they're overwhelmed with how many things they have to watch.
Yep, so they have them specialize.
So let's take our 7 and let's take 3 of them are going to do skiing acts. They're going to judge the skiing just as we do now, flow, execution, difficulty, spectator appeal. One judge is going to watch towboat driving only. One judge is going to watch sound and announcing only. One judge is going to watch production and showmanship only. One judge is going to watch pickup boat, something of that nature. However you want to slice it up. But they become a specialist, a master in their area, and it becomes easier for them to watch and focus on one particular element and to compare from show to show. So if I'm just watching towboat driving, it's super easy for me to know how this show did and how it compares to the previous show and how it compares to the previous show to that. The argument I've heard, I brought this up to a couple of people in contrary to this, is that maybe it lends itself to bias because right now we have a system where there's 7 judges or 5 judges and you throw out the high and low, and that essentially negates any bias in our scoring, which I would argue that maybe it doesn't anyway because there's ways to do around that. However, one judge judging just production and showmanship might lend itself to some biases, but I think if we went this way, it would open up potential interest in our pool of judges because it maybe isn't so overwhelming to have to come in and think about all the things you got to do.
Yep.
So just an idea, and because I feel like our judges are like superheroes, we ask them to do so much, and then you add the difficulty charts on top of it. We'll talk about it today, but it makes their job easier and harder at the same time. Like they know what number they're going to get, but they're paging through these charts, and it's really difficult to keep their eyes on the water, on the stage, at the same time as scoring the show. They're asked to do a lot, and my hot take is to simplify that by dividing up the tasks of our officials.
Well, let's see what our guests have to say about that.
Yeah, let's
today.
ask them about it.
All right.
That's great. So there we go. That's today's hot takes. Before we get to our Q&A today with Jeff and Sandi, we need to first talk about the board shop. Snow ski season is nearly here, and the board shop is ready.
Yeah, that's right. The board shop is fully stocked with all your winter sports gear. There's skis, there's boards, there's boots, there's bindings, there's jackets, apparel, and more. And, of course, they have sales on all the summer gear they're trying to clear out, right? They've got everything you need.
Yep, visit the shop in Lake Geneva or hop online and get everything you need, everything you've ever wanted at bswake.com. That's bswake.com. Time to welcome today's guests. Our listeners have been asking for more information from officials. So here we go. We have two of the best officials in our sport. Both are senior judges with countless years of regional and national show judging experience. Both have a long legacy in the sport of show skiing. We're excited to chat with them today. Let's welcome to the show Jeff Henke and Sandi Oleson. Hey, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Hey, yep, thank you.
Thanks for
Excited
being
to
here.
have you guys. So we're going to start off with a little background information. Jeff, we'll start with you. How long have you been judging, and did you show ski before you were a judge?
Yes, I show skied for 20 years, so that gave me the background in this. And I've been judging for over 35 years. For a while, I was actually doing both. Competed in Wisconsin and, the 3 tournaments here, back to Lamb's Farm days and nationals, and then went to other regions and actually started judging. So there's a lot of transition period there, and obviously been doing it for over 40 years now.
Yeah, so if I do my math right, you started show skiing when you were, what, 2?
Yeah, probably 4 or 5. A few years before Matt. I heard his numbers last time, so
Yeah.
not
Sandi,
much though.
Sandi, how about you?
Well, I certainly don't have that length of time. I skied in the 70s, way back when, but I was only maybe 3-4 years, and then got married, and then we didn't get back into family. I think in 1990 with my 2 sons and husband. So I kind of been involved since 1990 as a family. When they got out of it, I started judging, I'm thinking around 2010. I think I got my senior rating in 2012. I've done every national since then. So been around a little while.
That's awesome. Great stuff. I mean, it's and having experience in our judging ranks is so important. And our skiers want that, need that, love that. And so we appreciate you guys and all that you do. Let's dive into some of the nitty-gritty of, judging and scoring in particular, that questions that people have. And we've gotten some questions from our listeners that they wanted to know about. We talk about this stuff all the time. Let's start with the more nebulous topics. So it's interesting. I think people now have a handle on the difficulty charts, right? Like it's a known quantity. You know what you're getting in difficulty in certain elements. It's the unknown now that people have questions about. And so let's start with Spectator Appeal. What goes in to Spectator Appeal? Now, we're also assuming, as you know, that our audience does not read the rule book. They don't read the language that's in there around the scoring categories, the box scores. There's specific guidelines for officials in the rule book. It's laid out. Understanding that, what goes into scoring Spectator Appeal? What stands out? How do you go about it? What is Spectator Appeal from your standpoint? Sandi, let's dive in with you.
I guess when I look at Spectator Appeal, I look at, first of all, what is the act? Is it something new? Is it something unique? Is it something entertaining? We see a lot of pyramids. We see a lot of the same things, but sometimes the Spectator Appeal comes on some of the simpler acts. So I really look at what, all the different components. Is it a new thing? How does the audience react to it? You can tell when it's something new and exciting. So you got to live it. You gotta be in it to know, I guess, how appealing it was to me. I don't know. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to explain.
Is it easy from the judge's tower to get a sense of how the crowd is reacting to something? Because you're kind of behind, right? You're kind of behind everybody.
Yeah.
Is it easy to tell if people are excited about something or maybe
Well, you
not?
can tell if they're intrigued, and if it's something that they've not seen before, or there's something that they're kind of everybody's looking for it or whatever. You can kind of tell. You can tell if it's staged. You can tell if it's a home crowd, type of thing. So yeah, you can tell. You can tell how the reaction is. The beer tin actually turns and looks. So I mean, there is some reliance on the audience.
Yeah. Jeff, how about you? When you're in scoring judge, not a chief, what goes into Spectator Appeal for you?
Yeah, for me, uniqueness always helps. We don't see many new things out there, so when you do, that always jumps to the top, as Sandy mentioned. To me, it's a lot about the entertainment value, right? Are the competitors, the skiers, the characters, are they engaging with us in the audience, or are they just out for a ski? And are they bringing it? Also, the whole production aspect from an announcer standpoint. I've seen announcers sell the shit out of something that really isn't that difficult, but they brought that entertainment value up by doing that. And vice versa, I've seen double 3-2 barefoot pyramids come through, and the announcer almost missed it, and the whole Spectator Appeal was lost. So I think you have to look at Spectator Appeal as all those entertainment factors of how much did you build it up, how entertaining is it for the audience, along with, obviously, if there's something unique out there.
Adam, that's on you. Spectator Appeal is all your job.
Great, thank you. No pressure.
It helps. Yeah. It helps.
Well, it helps if there's people behind you that are skiing too, right? Something comes through. So, Jeff, your answer kind of dovetails right into my next question, which our last podcast was all about production. So this is going to be one of those questions. How do you score production and entertainment? I mean, what elements do you look for in a particular production? I mean, kind of a loaded question, but Jeff, why don't you go first?
Yeah, first of all, people probably don't understand. We use what's called a box score sheet, and we have that sheet. So if we're judging, it's really critical, your secretary, your assistant judge. I'll be rattling off things all through the show. Minus for this, plus for this, for production. And to me, I think you guys have hit on some of these in the past things, right? We've talked about winter points, backdrops, props on stage. If the skiing isn't there, is it still an entertaining show? The other big thing that I look for is it's kind of that overall choreography of, did you pull the show together and have that entertainment factor in a simple enough theme that you could follow? I mean, I know Skip always said you should be able to go out to the porta potty, come back, and still know where you're at in the show. Sometimes it gets so complicated you can't figure it out. I know you guys, we had a discussion about 3 years ago on a show that I didn't understand. And I think you've done a great job of adapting to that and coming up with a simpler show. But I think it's just so critical. I hear it all the time when we go out and do critiques, smaller teams say they can't compete. To me, you can have the whole production entertainment factor without having 10 invert guys and an 8-foot back barefoot line. I've seen shows like that, and I think that's the critical piece. It takes practice, it takes effort, just like it does for skiing, but that's what we're looking for in the production, is that, is the overall show flowing? Is it simple for the audience that may not even be a national level show skier, right? Do they get entertained by what you're actually putting on?
Mm-hmm. I like that what you said. I think that can resonate with people. If you were to took the skiing out of your show, would it still, what you do on stage, would that still be entertaining? Would you still have a captive audience? I think that's one way for people to look at it. Like, hey, if we took the skiing out, if what we're doing on stage, does that hold water?
Well, like, and is the show and the stage interacting? We've also seen shows where it's like I ski, then I have great stage stuff, but it's not combined.
Yeah. Yep.
But we really do, in the judges clinic, Sandi can talk to it or answer it. We talk about that fact of if you took the skiing away, were you still entertained? And that's really, to me, all part of that production.
Sandi, how about you?
Well, and I look at the very same things that Jeff does, but I also, my mind is in this mindset of cohesiveness of things, and how much time and effort was spent into developing boat patterns and developing the skits and the things that entertain us in between the skiing. To me, that is putting that all that together also shows me that they spent some time really looking at the production, and we thought about that boat pattern. We thought about making sure that they land on the right end. And that particular boat
Hallelujah!
pattern worked for that.
God dang, I'm so happy to hear this.
I'm a boat pattern person. I used to draw them out. So I understand when a pattern looks good because I used to map them out. So
And there,
to me,
and like to me, like
that's what I look at too.
yeah, and so like
In
production
addition to
for
all
me.
the things.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Production to me is a much bigger thing than your theme. People use that term interchangeably. Production is so much more than just your theme. It is how it flows. It is how it transitions from water to stage. It is how it's all put together as a whole. That is production, and that takes work and time and effort and intelligence, and it's more than just a theme. Correct?
Correct.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If I find myself being entertained by the show and I'm not writing down my scores, I feel like the production has drawn me in, and that's always a plus.
Yeah.
So if I'm all of a sudden go, oh gosh, I haven't written anything down, it's because I got engaged with the show, and that's a good thing. That shows someone spent time producing that whole thing from start to finish.
How big of a role in the production score does, for lack of a better term, bells and whistles play? Lots of props, big backdrops, fireworks, smoke, those sorts of things. How big of a role do those play in that production score?
It does. I mean, it does. I mean, obviously they have spent time and effort into setting the scene, and I guess that's what it does. Is it sets the scene. Sometimes the props are used, sometimes they just sit. But if the props are actually used as part of the show, I will put a little plus on that the props are actually used in the show versus just something on the stage. However, the stage props will set the theme and shows me that they have taken that extra step to put something there for me to see. Because I will put a negative if there is nothing on the stage for props or scenery.
Jeff, how about you?
Similarly, I think the backdrop, the props on stage, it sets the theme. It also takes our attention to where you want us to be looking. So we're looking at the main dock. If it's a small backdrop and we can see all the cluster going on behind it, not too good, right? You're going to get minuses. The same with the stage, because I think it just sets the scene, sets that whole production theming. I think some teams, to be honest with you, have taken it to the extreme, like you mentioned, fireworks. And I think sometimes that can be more distracting than it can help. Because all of a sudden you're looking over. I remember a show this summer. I'm looking over because all of a sudden we got fireworks bangs going off, and yet we got the jumpers coming at the ramp. It's kind of like an announcer pointing the direction. So I think the backdrops, I think the props are really critical in the overall, but I think you can take it too far and, for lack of a better word, spend money where you don't have to.
Yeah, I agree with that too, Jeff. It can be distracting.
Yeah, and if you're not, if something's there and it doesn't really serve a purpose, otherwise just maybe adding something in for the purpose of adding something in, I can see how that could be distracting or not really adding to your overall production. Makes sense.
Right.
What are some things? So again, kind of continuing on, production and entertainment value, spectator appeal. Let's talk about showmanship. What do you look for when it comes to showmanship? Is it just the smiles on stage, or what? What do you look for in showmanship?
I think that's kind of the misnomer that you can come up to stage, put a smile on, and you're high in showmanship. To me, it's about the energy you're bringing, the character. Are you playing that character throughout? I especially look on the water. Are you actually engaging with us the whole time? You see people that do that when you're on the water, and it's awesome. And then you see the person who's focused on the water, and then all of a sudden they come up to stage and they go, "Oh, I'm supposed to put my smile on now." To me, that isn't good showmanship. It's the fluidity of it all the way through, and just the high energy some people bring in. Like I say, they play a character, they play a part, even if they're not a character in the show. As a skier, the enthusiasm's there. So to me, it's carrying that energy for the whole 60 minutes or whatever of your show, not just putting a smile on your face and half the time a fake smile when I'm on stage doing my intro.
Yeah, I look at their sense of urgency to get to the stage sometimes. It show me that you've got that sense of urgency that I really need to get there. Sometimes you land deep but you can see them really hustling to get up there. And when they get up there, they don't look like, oh my gosh, I made it, and all the things that Jeff said, it is the cohesiveness that you have with your fellow, teammates too. How helpful are you to them, and the camaraderie between them after they've landed and they're running off and they're gathering skis and they're still showing that sense of urgency to get on to the next thing. And certainly the smiles, that type of thing is always expected, but you need that extra sense of urgency. I got that word from Paul Drost long ago, and I always keep it in the back of my head, that show that sense of urgency to get to the stage.
I have to imagine that showmanship and quality introductions kind of go hand in hand in your scoring too, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely they do. Because that's the last time we see them in that act, is the introduction.
On introductions, is just jog my memory on something. There's I think a bit of a misconception with people with the box score of introductions. Some people think that your final end of show introduction is your introduction box score. And that is not the case. It is your introductions from start to finish throughout your show are the composite of that introductions box score, not just your final. Well, your final introduction is one component of the entirety of the show, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's introductions on the water. We've got so many things that are not landing anymore. I count that introduction that they give them as they're skiing past as part of the introductions. So there's a lot of different places that these introductions occur. The beginning of the act, what they do in the middle, and certainly the end, and however they end it, it could be one of many ways. They're all relevant. So every act has an introduction, beginning and end.
And I think the versatility and the variety actually helps, right? Where you introduce the jumpers as they're going past, or I think we've mainly gotten away from this, but the barefoot line flips out at the end. You introduce them right there in the water. We don't wait 2-3 minutes for them to run up on stage anymore. Introducing the boat drivers as they're doing it, right? You don't have to have a separate boat intro to do it. So it does go throughout, but to me, that's your payoff part, right? I mean, that's the that act's payoff when they're actually doing it. So, I mean, the end intro to me is just one small component of the whole thing. It's really how you've been
Right.
doing those intros. The other suggestion I would have for people is simple and clean is better than intricate and sloppy. It's great to
Yep.
see people have high choreographed intros, but oftentimes it just doesn't look good. And sometimes simple is better if it's nice and clean.
Hmm.
I don't know, Sandy, if you think differently.
No, I agree. I agree with that completely. Completely.
Yeah. On boat intro, it's interesting. We've talked about not doing a collective final boat intro, but introducing them throughout or doing a flyby. The fear is, and this is a fear. This happens in other elements within a water ski show, other conversations, is that we're going to get dinged for that. That some judges will wonder or not notice, or it won't be clear enough, and so then the apprehension from a show director is, well, do we do that? What if they miss it? What if we get dinged for that? And so there's apprehension there. I would love to do that because I think it flows better to do it throughout.
I was going to say, I think it can help your flow. It can keep things moving by not, specifically pointing them out. That and, back to your announcer or when you're doing the intro. Intro them when they, pull the 35 girl ballet or when they did the
Right.
barefoot, intro them right when they're highlighted from a driving perspective versus at the end of the show when they're sitting up on the beach. To me, you're gonna
Calling
get
their attention,
that.
Jeff, that's a great spot to call it right there, because that also draws your attention to boat driving patterns, starts, all that type of things right then and there. So I can't believe that. Well, I would not ding anybody for not having a formal boat introduction. If the announcer has done a good job of making sure that I'm, being introduced to these people throughout the show, I think that's perfectly fine.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's music to my ears.
I feel like in the past, when we used to end our show traditionally with a pyramid, and then pyramid would land, and then we'd do boat intro. I feel like that's when tournament audiences would start to just kind of get up and leave. Like,
we gotta be
show's
Oh yeah,
over.
absolutely.
Concession stand.
So we've kind of been doing the most of the boat intro prior to our last act, and I think that's worked out well. But man, if get away from that traditional long end boat intro, and like you said, throughout the show, that helps flow tremendously, and I think it keeps people engaged. So I like that.
Yep. Adam, let's hit him with some comedy.
Oh,
This is your cup of tea.
no, not anymore. I mean, we haven't scored comedy forever. So that's the question. What goes in? I mean, there's not a difficulty chart for comedy. What goes into scoring comedy? It's a 0 to 100 score. This is something where one judge can give it an 80, and the next judge would give it a 30. It's just so there's such a wide range. What are judges looking for in comedy?
I'll tell you that
fleshed
I've seen that some judges are harder to entertain. Jeff, I don't know. How do you?
Yeah, I
Look
can
at it.
start at least with definitely right. We tell judges start at 50 in the middle, right? Because we're trying to still promote comedy. To me, it's first off, and it sounds simple, but you got to make me laugh. I mean, if I'm sitting up there going, it's kind of cute, you're not getting 80s. That's like 20s across the board. Some definite things don't do for your listeners. Don't do local humor. Don't do inside jokes. They may play well at a local ski show or even at a bar after a tournament, but it's got to be something that the judges are going to understand. So simple that way. Another thing that I've seen is, we all can remember certain comedy acts that were good. I mean, the skip parody and the singing, the little mini ramp, right? Those things you could tell were practiced and performed, right? Don't think up these comedy acts in the bar the night before the tournament, because I can tell you a lot of them seem like that when we're up there judging. They're like, okay, they didn't put any time or effort into this one, and somehow, when you had 4 or 5 cocktails in you, it sounded really funny last night, but it doesn't pull off,
Yeah.
So it sounds simple, but it isn't simple to get comedy. But if you can get us to laugh, and if you can make it generic enough that everybody can understand it, the audience and the judges, you're on the right track to trying to score comedy.
The challenge in scoring it is what you said, though. Like, if you dislike it, you give it a 20, and we're probably not going to put out an act in our show that's going to get 20s from the judges.
Correct.
So there's an inherent risk in scoring comedy, because I know what we're going to get from big act, and I know what we're going to get from jump act, and I know what we're going to get from pyramid. I have no idea walking into a tournament how our comedy is going to score.
I think it's a good point, because we're kind of numbers geeks, Matt.
Yeah.
It also depends on what your average show, your ski acts are going to score anyways, right? If you're shooting for the 350 to 400 on acts, it's a risk, right?
Yep.
There was a team this last year scored 3 comedy acts. When I saw the form,
3?
3. And I was like,
Adam, were you there training that team or what?
I hope that show was 40 minutes long. Holy smokes.
Well,
and we actually talked to the team, and I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? And they had the right justification, is we don't have a lot of power in skiing. We do think we can perform. And you know what? 2 out of the 3 were in their top 5 scoring acts.
yeah.
For comedy.
Yeah. Was that Sioux Falls? Sioux Falls?
Oh,
Yeah.
good for them.
They put
were
the effort
hilarious.
in. I mean, they made it funny. And I mean, they had prop cars.
It was rehearsed. It was rehearsed very well. And it was funny. It wasn't, I always think it's got to be, like I said, it's got to make me laugh. Cute is not necessarily funny. Some kids out there doing a cute little dance is not necessarily comedy. It's not necessarily
might be entertaining,
funny.
but you're not laughing.
It's not in the intent of comedy. It's not funny. It's cute, but it's not necessarily funny. So,
Let me ask you this, and you guys can just say yes or no. I brought this up before you guys came on. What if it was changed so that comedy was a required act in a show? Everybody had to do it. Of your 13 acts, 1 had to be comedy. What do you think about that?
ooh, risky for a team, because
But if everybody had to do it,
Everybody has to do it.
if everybody
It's
had to
required.
do it, I would hope that they'd figure it out then.
put some work into it, right?
Put some work
I do
into
say-
it. Yeah.
I think that's the biggest. I'd love to see something like that, just because you would put work into it when you had to do it, right?
Yeah,
And there are ways
practice,
to make
yeah.
this funny. I know people don't like the whole required acts. We've talked about that before too. Of you can only have 2 pyramids, you can only have whatever. But it would make it interesting to see what people could come up with. I think
We're
the
onto
other
something.
thing, and my personal preference is, we've gotten away from remember, you got to have a portion of it on the water, either skiing or performance-powered watercraft, right? No offense, but the announcer coming in on the pickup boat doesn't do a whole lot for me on the comedy. When we saw some of the comedy we were just talking about from the team this summer, part of the comedy act's a barefoot circle, right? So they had actual skiing ability tied into this whole comedy and characters, which again makes it more difficult. But I still like the mini ramp. Still makes me laugh every time I think of it. The first time we saw it, even the second time it was brought out when they did the
Yeah.
act. So there's ways to do it. Yeah, it would be an interesting concept, Adam, to see if
Yeah. I'd
I
love
think
it.
some teams would really struggle.
Yeah.
Make it happen, Jeff. Make it happen.
Yeah.
It would put emphasis on the entertainment value of your show for sure. It's an interesting concept. Oh, good stuff. I mean, that's it's interesting with comedy. It's a tough one, man. That's good
it is.
information here, a good conversation. Adam,
Matt.
one company that's pumping out high scores is Flyman Skis. They've got the jump skis, the swivel skis, custom made skis of all types, featuring honeycomb core in their jump skis, their featherboard swivel skis of varying width for all swivel ski body types. They've got it all.
Yeah, and they're affordable. Made by skiers for skiers. You still see used jump skis for sale for ridiculous amounts of money. I mean, why do that when you can get a brand new pair of Flymans basically for the same price? They're fully customizable, and they're in ski shows everywhere.
That's right. Tons of skiers are riding Flyman Skis, and you should too. Get yours at flymanskis.com. That's flymanskis.com. Let's segue a little bit to kind of the overall state of judging. I'm curious. I don't know if our audience is as curious. It seems like we always have a bit of a shortage of officials. How is the current state of officials? What's being done to recruit more, mentor more, grow more officials? Where are we at? This is, Jeff, probably a question primarily for you as the chief of officials.
Yeah, we're constantly trying to get more people involved. It's a tough role because, as you folks know, if you're competing, most of the time people aren't willing to spend the extra weekends out, working as an official and the work there. But we've done a lot we're doing multiple clinics a year for people. I would say on the international front, I'm doing probably twice the amount of clinics we're doing even local, just because the competitors also want to get involved with it and understand it. They're using the clinics as a way to understand the scoring. But for instance, this year, a preface to, I know Adam was going to want to sit in on the board meeting, but at the board meeting, we actually have 4 people we're bringing up for senior rating this year.
Great.
Which is a lot for us. And Matt, you've been at those meetings. If we have 1, we're doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, reversely, we also have some more senior judge transitioning out. A couple of judges are, so it's always cyclical, but anybody, I'll put the plug in already, anybody that wants to get involved, you will get a totally different perspective up there. We'd be, glad to have people come in and try it, whether it's a different division at state or whether it's a different region. We're always looking for people that are interested and want to get involved.
Yeah, I always recommend to people, too, to secretary. Go. You know how much you would learn just by sitting up there with a judge and being a secretary? Go do that. Dip your toe in the water and be a secretary. It's a tough, it's tough to find great officials because so many people continue their involvement in their team for so long. Like, I would love to judge. I would love to, but, as long as I'm in and my kids are in, like, that becomes really hard to do. And that's always going to be that way in our sport, unfortunately, there's a lot of quality people that would be really good officials, but they're so involved with their club, that's got to step aside at some point.
Yeah.
So,
Matt, the next question's all yours.
Yep. So
This is your baby.
This is my baby. So I've got a concept. I want to know your thoughts. I'm going to throw a concept at you. I don't know if I've mentioned this to Jeff in the past. I probably have. A new concept for judging, and it's based on how drum corps judges. I grew up going to drum corps competitions, and they have one judge watches the drum line, and one judge watches the formation and movement, and one judge watches the theme, and one judge watches the flag line color guard, and they all specialize in an area. What if our system went to, you took 7 judges and 3 of them did the skiing acts, 1 watched towboat driving, 1 watched showmanship and production, 1 watched, something of that nature. Break it up, something like that, where you became a specialist in and focused on that. Now, the pushback I've heard in conversation with some people is that it brings some potential bias in when one judge is just watching towboat driving or one judge is just watching announcing and sound. Their one score could bring in some bias. However, the flip side is that judge knows that category, and they can compare from show to show better because they're only watching and focusing on that. And the only reason I suggest this as even a possibility or a thought in our system is because you guys have the hardest jobs on the face of the earth during a water ski show. You are asked to do so much, and we task you in our system with this insanity of trying to watch everything, and then look, now the difficulty charts have made scoring easier and more difficult at the same time, because you find your head down in a chart instead of watching or listening to what's on stage. You just have too hard of a job. And so I wonder if, using examples from other sports, other events, drum corps in particular, if we went to that sort of model, and maybe it would even open up the ability for more people to be less intimidated getting into judging, if they knew they only had to focus on one element or become an expert in one particular element. So that's my soapbox on a new possible idea. What are your thoughts on that concept?
I've talked about this before, because for most people, what we ask them to do up there is almost ridiculous once you've been up there. I mean,
Yep.
at nationals or any of these, right, you're handing out over 1,000 scores, and also watching the theme, and also looking for most valuable male, female. I mean, the things that people, they don't understand, and everybody's going to get something wrong. I get something wrong every tournament. I come back,
I do.
crap, I wish I had this score, to redo. What I've talked to people about is there a happy medium between where you're going, Matt, and that, which is, do you do even, because I love high-low thrown out, just so we get rid of bias, do we do 5 judges are working on just the ski acts and 5 are doing box scores, right? So you only have to do half of what you were doing before, because then I think you can really focus on that better. And I'm not saying that's the answer, but something like that. We're doing it with freestyle now. People said we couldn't do it. All of a sudden now we got a cone judge, we got 3 distance judges, and then we've got our actual form and execution judges, right? So I do think it's a direction to go. I'll be real honest with you, and this should not shoot down the idea. It's the logistics of making it happen. Back to, we have trouble getting judges at every tournament, especially right now. We have one weekend out of the year where there's 3 tournaments going on the same weekend. We just don't have enough judges to cover. But that shouldn't be an excuse. That should be more the, okay, how do we figure out how to make that happen?
Yeah.
Because I do like the idea of thinking differently. We get so set in this way, like this is the way to do it. Would we get more people willing to do it? Do we get a better results, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think it's
agree.
That would, go ahead, Sandy.
I agree. Because if you had the judges that were just strictly, say, doing the box scores, you wouldn't even need to have an assistant at that point, because you would be the one, watching and writing. And I think you could easily get by without having an assistant if someone was just doing box scores, say, as their specialty. Because then you're not concentrating on counting and watching what the moves are, and in the acts, you can really focus on the boat patterns, the starts, and all those production and how it all blended and the whole bit. So yeah, you could do it. I think, like I said, I think you could do it with one person for box scores. I don't know that you could still do it with the show part. But
although, if you extrapolate that out, that makes sense, Sandy. If you take Jeff's model of 5 judges on the skiing, 5 on the box scores, right now a nationals has 7 judges, 7 secretaries. There's 14 up in the tower. You take your model, 5 with 5 secretaries for the skiing, and 5 without secretaries for the box scores, and you have 15. So it's only one more person up in the tower than we currently have.
Right. I know. I just think that doing box scores as your sole entity would not necessarily need an assistant to help you.
Yep.
I think one person could handle that.
Yep. Makes sense.
And that would be one way of getting around, and that's the thing we got to think about, the logistics of making that happen.
Yep.
I'm going to go out on some black ice. I think the same thing when we're talking specialty judges for individuals. I can guarantee you the judges aren't offended when you say that. It's more the, how do we get people trained? How do you get another 5 or 7 people there? How do you... Yeah. I think it's working through those issues. We've already talked on the officials committee of, right now you get a senior rating, that's everything. do you have ratings for team shows and then ratings for doubles, rating for freestyle, rating for swivel? And this is just ideas we're kicking around that says, again, how do you make it better and how do you make it so people get involved with maybe it's freestyle or maybe it's swivel, so they can kind of work their way in, and love to have these discussions with people because I think we're very open to that. We just have to figure out how to make it work.
Right. I agree.
Let me ask you this. So you guys write down just the amount of scores that you guys have to write down, like say during a nationals weekend, 13, 14 teams for all the different acts and all the box scores. There's no way you can go back and remember what you scored this act, 7 shows ago. If you can, you should be
keep notes on that, Adam.
But if you can remember all that, right, you should be in Vegas counting cards. But you guys don't know the results, right? You don't know like who won just because you scored that show. So what I'm asking is, have you ever been surprised at the results? Like,
oh, yeah.
Holy smokes, what?
Yeah, I mean, you
don't have to give examples, but I'm just wondering, have you ever been surprised? Like, wow, okay.
Oh, absolutely. We had a meeting at a couple of times where we're like, "Are you sure that's right?" So
before we announce this, you want to double check that?
There's times where it's obvious. I think it's obvious to the crowd, right? There's times where teams just blow. But lately, it's been close, right? I mean, we've had a lot of close tournaments where, whether it's the overall show, Adam, like, did you win the tournament, or even, a production box score or driving where you don't want to do this because they've probably given the clue away from the judges, where the judges usually sit up top and our heads snap like, what the heck? Who the heck gave them that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do think you're right. When you give away 1,000 to 1,200 different scores, and I've said this before for myself, Sandi, you can chime in.
Yep.
People will ask you, and it's like, let me go back and analyze the scores first because I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's surprises.
Yeah.
At least for me.
I don't know who. Yeah, I don't know who I put first until I add my scores up, and I don't do that till after the tournament. But I find that I can be anywhere from 5 to 20 points different from from the score, and my first, second, and third can be different. My scores are definitely. My first place was maybe the second place team, but I'm usually it's within a smaller range. So, but they some can be a surprise. Sometimes it's pretty clear.
I think so.
But
to your point,
we don't know until we add our own.
No, and like last year, 2023 Nationals, Rock Aqua Jays stomped everybody. They won by 100 and some points. You knew it when it was done. They were the winning show. This last year was fascinating. At state and nationals, we had no clue what the results were going to be. And actually, Dave and I have talked about this. If you would have said that Mad City would have higher skiing scores and Rock Aqua Jays would have higher box scores and they would win, I would have told you you're crazy.
Right.
And that's how it played out. And at state, it was reverse. It was super weird. Like at state, we thought for sure the Rock Aqua Jays were going to win. We ended up having such a big gap in the box scores that we won. And that was surprising. And so I'm guessing the same with you guys, because you don't know the totals. Your gut probably says, well, I think so-and-so won, but I don't really know. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then because there is a little
you
bit
got
of
different
a deep
judges.
analysis of,
Yeah.
Yeah. We do go back though, Adam, and map that out. You guys do winter points as in prepping for next year's. I literally go through all the scores at all the tournaments and map out just that. What did each individual judge have? You got a 7-judge panel, who's high and low. But absolutely, we can be just as surprised. That's the reason we like coming out and watching the awards, right?
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
You don't know.
Yep. I love that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, another question for you: are small teams at a disadvantage in our sport, in our current scoring system?
My first thought is yes, because there are the difficulty charts that reward for larger things. I mean, it's
Bigger
a
ballet lines score better. Bigger
bigger
pyramid
ballet.
score better. Bigger
Yeah.
barefoot lines score
Right.
better. Right?
Right. And I think as a smaller team, it's probably harder to outproduce for production value and box score values to overproduce, to match some of the big teams then, because they just don't have the volume of people to do it. So I think I'd have to say yes. I don't know, Jeff.
How about you?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think small teams sometimes can use that as a crutch for production and music and all those kind of fun things that go into it. But when you look at difficulty, you look at execution, obviously numbers help from a skiing standpoint. This goes to something somebody pointed out. I guess you guys had a podcast last week on production. Our sport still has the basically 1/3, 2/3. Skiing is, a 1.3 multiplier, where box scores, are a 0.7. Do you follow what we do on the international side? And again, this is just, that debate of, do you follow that and make it at least 50-50 that says, okay, not only do big numbers score better on the acts, but they also get a multiplier on those acts on top of it.
We talked about this last podcast with Don Phillips. I asked Adam and Don the question: do you think that box scores should be worth more than our 1/3, 2/3 split? They both thought yes. I also put out an Instagram poll on our Instagram page to our listeners on whether they think it should be worth more. And fascinatingly enough, the poll numbers came in as no. The majority felt like having skiing way more is preferred. And I was surprised by that. I thought more would lean toward a 50-50 split.
That is
I kind of do.
Surprising, but
yeah, that is surprising, because you would think the smaller teams would want to even the playing field a little bit with the ability to do more production and box scores.
Yeah. So
if I can't,
the bigger teams have more people on Instagram, so that's the moral of the story, right? That's the only takeaway from this.
Big teams have more people on the poll on Instagram. Yep. But as a follow-up to this, so what are some things that small teams can do that they should be focusing on to enhance their shows and make them more competitive? Jeff, you've mentioned some, but there are things. What are some things that smaller teams can do?
I mean, obviously we talked about production and the effects those have. The other thing that I kind of preach or suggest, recommend, whatever you want to call it, when I go out and, work with teams, do critiques, flow. Mm-hmm. Guess what? If you don't have the firepower, have a 45-minute show. Move it fast, because guess what? That helps you on the box scores. It helps you on that 25% of your skiing act.
Aquanuts have done a great job with that. Their team's gotten smaller and their flow is banging. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You just, it's a typical get on and off. Mm-hmm. You guys do it, I'm sure, or talk about it. On a weaker act, let's just get it over with, right? Get it on, get it off, and let's get to something that we are. So I think there's things that a small team can do to enhance that. But I think a lot of times they go with the lock and load theory of, I'm going to take all 20 people that I've got and wait for them to come back to the dock and go. So now they've slowed it down and they don't have the firepower. I think those are some of the things that come to mind when I talk to smaller teams. Mm-hmm. And the things we talk about as far as production and showmanship and those types of things that they don't necessarily take advantage of. Sandy, what else you?
Yeah, no, I same thing as you. Really, it's like I said, they can do some better productions. They can speed the show up. They can be entertaining, and if they can't ski, then that's what you have to focus on. If they can't ski, they don't have as many skiers. Focus on all the other things, your introductions, all that stuff, your costumes, whatever else you can do to show that cohesiveness of your show will help.
Well, guys, Jeff, Sandi, this has been fantastic. This has been great. We appreciate all of the feedback. We appreciate your time. Thank you for being on the show today.
You're welcome.
You guys are awesome.
For
Thank
having
you so
us.
much for and like you guys, it's so, I think it's so important that our audience wants to hear feedback from the officials. You guys have always been great and so approachable. And for our audience, our listeners too, just to note, these are only 2 judges and their opinions. There are others out there, but they're doing a great job of education, working together, collaborating, so that they're all on the same page with a lot of things. We still have a lot of subjective areas in our sport, and there should be. These 2 have been willing to share their thoughts and opinions today. They're 2 senior judges with a lot of experience, experience judging regionals and nationals, and so we appreciate you sharing all of your insight today, sharing your thoughts with us and our audience. And so thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Adam, that was awesome.
Yes, it was. So takeaways. Bigger teams have more people on Instagram. Production should be a bigger part of the show, and we should require comedy. I'm kidding.
Those are your takeaways. Yeah, 50-50. Adam wants 50-50 box scores and required comedy.
So, no, seriously, for people that are listening, now what you need to do is you need to go back, you need to re-listen to the whole thing, you need to take notes, because there are a ton of gems in here that are going to help your show. So go back, listen again, take notes.
And then go to Think Tank and go to judges Q&As and show critiques and ask the same questions, because you're going to learn a lot. These guys have the knowledge. They're willing to share it. So many people at Think Tank are willing to share it. And we're lucky to have great people like this in the sport. So thank you to them for being on the show today. Thank you to Flyman Skis and the Board Shop. Flyman Skis, custom-made jump skis, featherboard swivel skis at affordable prices. Get yours at flymanskis.com. And the Board Shop, all your summer and winter sports gear is yours at bswake.com. And don't forget, December 1, Sunday night, we are revealing our top 5 nominees in each of our awards categories. The award show is going to be Friday night at Think Tank. Speaking of Think Tank, you got to be there.
And thanks again to all of our listeners and viewers. This is Matt and Adam, and this is The Ski Show.
Thank you for listening to The Ski Show, the ultimate show ski podcast with Matt and Adam. If you have questions or ideas for the show, find us on social media or message us at theskishowpodcast@gmail.com.